Hello, my name's Max, and I'm going to be talking about how the US did not live up to its ideals of human dignity and the protection of life during the 20th century. And we'll be mentioning the bombing of the Japanese cities with nuclear bombs, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the rejection of Jewish immigrants trying to flee the ever more dangerous Europe. In the Declaration of Independence, it states that no one can be deprived of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is one of the largest values and beliefs that the United States as a country endorses. Yet throughout their history, it is evident that they did not live up to these beliefs. The belief also of human dignity in the Americas is present even more so than many of the written beliefs. Yet, just like the past beliefs we just mentioned, they were not present during these two occasions. Firstly, the bombings of the cities were a last-ditch effort to end the Pacific War during World War II without risking any more American lives trying to take over the Japanese mainland and the surrounding islands. The Japanese were fierce to defend their home due to the belief that the most honorable action is to die in battle and to surrender is the most dishonorable one. Before the bombings took place, Japan was being toyed with by external powers, most noticeably the Americas. When they put unfair treaties and deals which crippled their economy and led to the attack on Pearl Harbor. Secondly, the U.S. did not permit the Jewish German refugees into the country because they feared the entrance of German spies into it, which led to false accusations of innocent people and more resentment to the Jewish immigrants just trying to find a home. Especially when Adolf Hitler rose to power in 1933, thousands of German Jews and of other European countries fled in order to escape persecution and to try to have a better life. But sadly, they came across an unforeseen issue, which was the unwillingness of Western countries to accept them for refugees. After World War II, it was known that the Germans were killing millions of Jewish people, to be exact 6,273,676. Of course, when the war was taking place, no one knew the exact number. Yet people knew it was high. This made the action of turning away the boat of Jewish immigrants ever more impactful. Most notoriously, in June 1939, the German ocean liner St. Louis or St. Louis and its 937 passengers, almost all Jewish, were turned away from the port of Miami, forcing the ship to return to Europe. Sadly, more than a quarter died in the Holocaust. Additionally, after the bombings took place, many Americans did not know the magnitude and the extent of damage on the Japanese people and their cities. Before the bombings, Japan tried to preemptively make an attack on Pearl Harbor to try and cripple the American Pacific Fleet. While this was no task to be forgiven, a much smaller amount of American people died during their attack, 2,403, than the droppings of the bombs, between 130,000 and 260,000. Sadly, during the ongoing years, many Japanese people died from delayed radiation poisoning due to cancer and other illnesses, which sadly led to further suffering of the Japanese people and further slowing down of the rebuilding of the war-torn cities. It took a long time in order to start the rebuilding process of the two most destroyed cities, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. A good thing was that Japan adopted the War Disaster Destruction Plan, which aimed to rebuild all 119 war-torn cities. August 9th and 6th, both bombs were dropped on both cities, which led to the finalization of the Pacific War and the end of World War II, yet it led to the death of thousands and sufferings of many more. In Nagasaki, reconstruction proceeded slowly. It was the latter half of 1946 before the first simple emergency dwellings were provided in various communities. The bombings had a large effect after the war since Japan experienced food shortages in both cities, which led to the starvation of many, even more so than the actual immediate killings of the bombs. In my opinion, America denied the life and liberty of the Jewish people seeking refuge, and it did not act on their beliefs of human dignity by sending them back to the place where they were being hunted, which was very cruel in this time and age, and still is. They did not live up to their ideals by excluding refugees and prohibiting them entrance into the country, knowing full well what would happen to them if they returned to Europe. Of course, the creation of UN, and you could name dozens more of the actions of the US, how it could offset this, but it's still definite that the issues and the underlying problems with America offset these. The bombs helped demonstrate how they did not live up to their founding beliefs, since they only wanted freedom at the start from their oppressors, aka the British, yet they become the oppressors and villains when they committed these two contradicting actions to their moral and written beliefs. In conclusion, the U.S. did not live up to its ideals of human dignity and protection of life, and it relates to present-day history as it shows how the U.S. clearly is dealing with the COVID-19 crisis, as its distribution of vaccines are primarily meant for its own country, as it's protecting its own interests first, which has a lot of similarities to the previous examples.